Welcome to the ManawaTech podcast. My name is Siobhan. In this episode, do you like bonsai trees? Well, meet former Chief Technology Officer, now indie game developer, Michael Davis. Now, Michael was an absolute delight to be interviewed on this podcast. We talk about many things in technology. We talk about joining a small team. We talk about managing people, as well as going out on your own. So I hope you enjoy this episode. So yeah, welcome on board, Michael, to this podcast. I guess we'll just jump straight into it. And I know you pretty well, but for anyone who doesn't really know you, do you kind of want to just explain who you are and what you're about?
Sure. So I'm Michael. Until recently, I was the CTO of an ag tech company in the Manawatu called Levno. And just a few weeks ago, I finished my job at Levno to start my own game studio. And I'm working on developing my first video game that will be coming out sometime next year.
Wow, that's quite cool. So did you start life at tech in Libno or did you do things before that?
Yeah, so Levno was my first job out of uni. So I studied an engineering degree majoring in product development at Messi University in
Yeah.
Palmy. And then after that, I was looking for work and met Larry, who is the owner of Livno, and was lucky enough that he gave me a chance to work at Livno. And I actually started doing some testing for the sensors. So at that time, we were doing a lot of fuel monitoring was our main product back then, and so I was testing out the sensors. Basically, when they came in from the manufacturer, they needed to be tested before they went out into the field. So I was building processes around that. And that was where I started. And just over the years, my role got more complicated and more responsibilities. And as Livno grew, I was really growing as well and getting given new opportunities and trying out new things until eventually I was running the managing the hardware development team. It was the guys that were building the hardware or developing the hardware and the firmware that ran on all of the devices. And then eventually started managing the software development team as well. So that was about 2 years ago when I got that CTO role,
Yeah.
managing both of those teams.
Nice. There's a lot to unpack there. I'm interested. So Libno is level notifications, right? That's kind of like the short terms. And like, what do you guys mainly do? So it's mainly hardware for like measuring tank levels. That's kind of like a very, I don't know, very shallow way of kind of thinking about it. What does Libno actually do?
Yeah, well, that's how it started. So it started with the idea of how we could make the fuel delivery businesses more efficient by monitoring how much fuel was in all the fuel tanks that they deliver to rurally.
Yeah.
And basically, if you knew how much fuel was in the tank before you went out to the site, then you could plan your route, your delivery route, much more efficiently. So it started that way, and then we started realizing that there was more to the game, the fuel delivery business than that. There was not only the fuel delivery side, but also the farmer side or the site side. They were interested in preventing fuel theft, in knowing where their fuel was
Interesting.
going
Okay.
in general.
Yeah.
And so we started realizing there was this kind of two market model where we could sell the same set of data off the sensor to both the distributor and the farmer or the site owner. And then we got into the milk vat monitoring business as well. So that was
Yeah.
about, again, it's the same stuff. It's about making sure that the dairy companies can collect milk efficiently because they know how much milk is in the vat. But there's all these side benefits to that. Once you've got that monitoring there, you can monitor the temperature of the milk and alert the farmer to when there's been a chiller breakdown. You can monitor the stirrer, whether the agitator is running, and you can use all of that data together to create really interesting insights that are valuable to both the farmer and the dairy company.
Nice.
Those are our main two products at the moment, but water and feed are really picking up now as well. So there are our other two products, and yeah, there's a lot of problems that kind of hardware enabled SaaS model can help with.
Cool. How did you get, so when you graduated, what was the transition like into getting work? Were you kind of worried about getting jobs? Were you quite comfortable? How did you get that connection with Larry? That's quite interesting, I think.
Yeah, and it was a really strange time. Well, not a strange time, but it was a complicated time in my life as well because I was actually getting ready when I finished uni. I was actually getting ready to go to the World Championships for Taekwondo,
Oh, cool.
and so I was literally training at one point like 30 hours a week,
Yeah.
in terms of getting ready for that competition. And so I met Larry through family, and then had some connections there, and then uh, I kind of was doing the interview, the job interview with him, and meeting him and stuff, and I was like, man, like if I get this job, I'm going to have to leave for 3 weeks to go to this World Championships overseas, like 4 weeks after starting this job, which
Yeah.
is exactly what ended up happening, which is really funny.
Okay. And like, so you knew Larry, was it through family friends or what was the connection again?
Yeah, he had done some work with my dad. So
Okay.
my dad is also in the egg space,
Yeah.
and so they knew each other through a different business that Larry was involved in at the time.
It's quite popular, I think. Would you say ag tech is quite big in the Manawatu region?
Yeah, it is. There's quite a few companies doing interesting stuff in the space. There's Livno, there's Biolumic, there is Green Tech Robotics that are doing some cool stuff as well. I think a lot of it comes from the like Massey University being there, and um, they've had their engineering degree running for quite some time now, and it's there's a lot of kind of crossover between that degree in what they study in the mechatronics side and what is possible in ag, and then you kind of
Yeah.
mix that with people's local connections and family farms and that kind of thing, and you get a lot of graduates coming out of Massey that are going, I want to fix problems that my family have been dealing with for years on the farm. And like at Levno, we've got a number of engineers, people like that have come off farm and grown up on farms, then gone to Massey,
Yeah.
and then come out going, what businesses can I work at that would help my family? Which is such a cool space to be in.
Yeah, they're in that problem space. So you've had quite a variety of roles in Libno. You were talking about managing people. What was that like? So you started off doing some testing and then writing firmware, then software, and then managing teams. What was that transition like?
Um, it was strange because it was kind of gradual in a way because we had in kind of natural because I had done quite a bit of project management during my early times at Livno. Like when I joined Livno, there was 4 or 5 other people.
Yeah, I was
So it
going
was
to
a
ask what was the early days? Like, what was the pretty
yeah,
much
much
employee number
smaller
five?
company. Yeah,
Yeah.
pretty much. Yeah. And so what that meant was that, like almost immediately, I had a lot of opportunities to pick up probably more responsibility than I was ready for, to be honest. But it meant that I grew really quickly and had to learn
Yeah.
really quickly. And so then by the time it was like, okay, we're going to start building up a team and we're going to have our own hardware engineers, it felt quite natural because I had already worked on managing a lot of projects, and
Yeah.
I had had some quite good managers at that time as well, and that had helped me learn the ropes and um, yeah, that I could use as sort of inspiration.
What are some good qualities of a manager? Like, can you tell straight away, or does it take time?
Yeah, I think it takes time. I mean, the I think like just having that understanding and connection to the people is really important.
Yeah.
And I think that can be hard for managers coming into a business. Like I found that I was at Lebanon for a long time, right? I was there for nine
Yeah. So early
years.
days. Yeah. Early
Yeah,
day,
and so
yeah.
yeah, so I could build up the like you only add people to the team one at a time, so you can build that connection with people over time, and I think that's harder for people coming into a business. Um, but I do think that is so critical is actually really understanding and being able to communicate with all of your staff. The communication is basically the problem of business. And every problem seems like a unique problem until you realize it's actually just another communication problem. So that is such a critical part of being a manager, is what to communicate, when to communicate, how to communicate it.
Yeah. What do you like? Do you enjoy the tech side or managing side or kind of both? Or like what's your
Yeah,
like, yeah.
I
What's your
like
day to
both.
day?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, my day to day at Levno was almost
At the time,
entirely
yeah.
the project management and the people management side.
Yeah.
So that was actually why I got back into, or how I got back into the game dev stuff, because
Yeah.
in high school I had done some game dev sort of accidentally. We had an IT class, and I realized once I got into it that most of the people in the IT class were there to learn how to type. I was at quite a like a decile one school, like
Yeah.
quite disadvantaged students there, and I
Oh,
was
yeah.
lucky enough um, to not be so disadvantaged. And so I had, like, me and a couple of friends had already, we were building computers, and we had played a lot of RuneScape, so we knew how to type. Um,
Yeah.
and
Type
so
fast as well,
we
so.
type fast, yeah. And so the class was mostly about learning to type, and so we finished the coursework in sort of the first 20 minutes of every hour.
Yeah.
And so then the teachers basically wanted us to not be playing games instead of, while everybody else was finishing. And so we said, that's cool, we'll just make games, and then we'll get to test them, and we can pretend that that's doing work. Which in hindsight it was, right? And we were learning programming without even really knowing it. So that was how I got
Yeah, it was
into it
fun. It
in
was
the
fun to
first
play.
place. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's
I
how I
want
got
to jump.
into,
Sorry.
yeah,
You,
go.
you, you go. You go. No, you go. You go.
So that was how I got into sort of programming and software in the first place. And then, because I was doing so much people management and project management at Levno, it was actually back during the COVID lockdowns. I was sort of like a moment of self-reflection going, I'm not really getting the creative side and the build side, and put your hands on the keyboard and write some code side that kind of got me into this place in the first place.
Yeah.
So that was when I started, just in my spare time, starting to make games again, and remade a few of the classics, and then started building my own games after that.
Cool. I want to dive into the game there, but just before we don't do that, you mentioned about like school DSL one. Do you think there could be more done teaching tech to like schools? Just thinking about that, just you mentioning that.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think it's probably quite different now. So like I'm 30 now, so
Yeah.
like when I was in high school doing that was 13 years ago, or 14 years ago. Um,
Where'd the
from
time
my
go?
Yeah, I know, right? um, and from my understanding, it is quite different now, and I think now, because we're seeing tech as such a legitimate career, and a career that can be attained for so many. I think now we're actually seeing a lot more done in schools. So, but yeah, I don't know. I'm not quite close enough to know for sure if that's the case. But a few people that I've talked to have said, yeah, their kids are learning coding, as early as 9 or 10 or 11, which I think is amazing.
Yeah, interesting. Now coming to the kind of the game dev portion. So you're in lockdown, had a self-reflection moment, and when did you start making games on the side? Was it during like lockdown? Obviously, you started in high school, but when did you start getting back into it? Was it during lockdown
Yeah,
or a bit
yeah,
after
in
that?
lockdown in 2020. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. And it's on. I saw it on Steam. Is it it's a card? I don't know. Do you want to explain the game to everyone?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
So my game is called Dungeons and Degenerate Gamblers. It is
I
a
like the name.
blackjack. Yeah, thank you. It's a blackjack-based roguelike deck builder. So what that means is you start the game with a standard set of 13 cards, ace through king of whichever suit you choose. You play blackjack against an opponent, and then once you defeat that opponent by playing blackjack better than them,
Mhm.
you can then pick a card to add to your set of cards that you can draw from. And the twist with my game is that those cards are based on cards from real life or cards from other card games. So it's kind of trying to stretch the imagination of what a playing card might be. So there's a birthday card, there is a credit card, there are cards from Pokemon, Hearthstone, and Magic the Gathering, and there's an SD card, like you put in your camera or your phone. So, and each of those cards has their own unique effect that changes the way that you play blackjack and makes it easier to get to 21. But as you go through the game, the opponents also have their own special decks, and they are also getting better and better at getting to 21 through the use of their special cards.
And these are opponents that it's multiplayer, right? So it's not like AI bots.
It's single player. It's bots.
Okay. And like obviously they got their kind of, what's an example of it? Like, what's the SD card do? It's quite interesting.
And so the idea is that each of the effects of the cards are in some way related to what they actually do. So like the SD card is a good example. It saves a card to be used for later.
Oh, that's very smart. That's cool.
Or like the other one that is a good example is like the business card. The business card swaps a card with an opponent, just like when you're meeting somebody and you're trading a business card with them.
Yeah, that's really cool. So you made the switch, I think, or the leap to work on your own thing. Would you say a month ago?
Yeah, 3 weeks. Yeah,
3 weeks ago. Yeah. Congratulations, by the way. I mean,
thank you.
I guess like the CTO role at Live though is going to be a huge thing to fill because you were there for so long. How's this 3 weeks been, and like how did you get the courage to? Because I guess being a CTO, a very stable job. It is stressful, but pays the bills. Versus I don't know what it's like, but going out on your own is quite scary. That's my opinion anyway. What was it like? How long did it take you to? Did you psych yourself up, or are you someone who's just you're pretty chill, like you know what to do?
No, I mean it was a really tough decision to make, and I still have really kind of mixed emotions about it, to be honest. Like I'm still. It's super exciting, right? I get to be sort of in charge of my own future, but there's stress and responsibility that comes with that that I didn't have at Levno, right? And I'm also really sad to be leaving Levno. It's a fantastic business. There's a great team. I think that what that company can do for the industry and for the planet is some really interesting stuff. But I felt that the time was right for me to take a plunge on something different. And it was just the right timing and a few different planets aligning, I suppose, that made this feel like the right move to make and at the right time.
Well said. I think, that's really, because a lot of people, when they leave jobs, they kind of, they don't like the place they were at before. But it sounds like you enjoyed, like, it was a tough decision to make, is to like rip off one, like, like you enjoy what you're doing at the time, but you kind of want to find something that aligns with you more, and the timing has to be right as well.
And I think the other thing that I'll say is like, this is going to be a really big challenge for me as well. Like there's a whole lot of stuff that I have no idea how to do with this new thing. And like that's really exciting as well. Because, I'd been at Levno for long enough to know how to get things done there. But that's so different now, right? I'm moving into a completely different industry. I'm working on my own, which means I have to wear a whole lot more hats that I wasn't wearing before. I now have to be an artist and a marketing guru and the CFO, and I have to figure out all of this stuff now that before there was other people to do. And so that's really exciting, just as a huge change and shift in my responsibilities.
That's really cool. Because Michael, there's a book called Lean In by Sheryl Sandberg. I just read it, and so Sheryl Sandberg, you probably know, she's the CEO of, was the COO of Facebook. She also worked at Google when it was like a small startup. And in the book, she talks about how she had the choice between working for like a big company or working for like a small startup. And she picked the small
Mm.
startup because that's where you learn a lot. So I'm thinking, Michael, are you someone who just loves challenges, or like, because I guess, with being a CTO, there's a lot of prestige, right? Like you're the CTO versus like, you said like you were doing well at that job, you liked the company, but you weren't, well, you didn't say you weren't learning, but like you kind of, how the job works. You want to challenge yourself even further. Are you someone who kind of likes a challenge?
Yeah, I think I'm really competitive person.
Yeah.
So, like I said before, I was back in 2015. I was going to the World Champs for Taekwondo,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I had been doing, that was like my ninth year of international competition. Um, and yeah, and then like even in my work at Livno, like I was competitive, comparing myself to my peers, and
Hmm.
trying to do the best I could. Uh, and I think this is kind of the same, right? Like I want to do this to challenge myself and to see if I can do it, and see if following this crazy dream is possible for me.
Interesting. Like, who are you competing against? Like with
I
working on your
don't know.
own? Like, are like other devs out there? I don't know. Maybe on Twitter, like posting like solo game devs, like posting what they've worked on. Like, how'd you get the inspiration to? Like, who do you look up to? Because it seems like I can only think of one person doing this right now. So
Yeah,
yeah,
there's a few people that have been in sort of a similar position, and like in terms of the game dev stuff, um,
yeah,
and that I do look up to as inspirations. So the one that a lot of people point to is the developer of a game called Stardew Valley. He made it by himself. Wildly successful video game, um, and like quite, yeah, just crazy successful. Um, and there's a few people like that I'm now looking up to, but I don't know. Like I take inspiration from all sorts of other places as well. Especially what I've been taking inspiration from recently is like music artists, and sort of like a weird spectrum of it as well. Like I'm really inspired by a couple of bands that I really like that have been doing it for ages, like Queens of the Stone Age, that somehow just have this impossible longevity where they're still performing um, at their peak, like so many years after they started doing this. But then I'm also really inspired by like these new artists that, these super young people, 20 something, that are just taking the world by storm and crushing it. Like I'm thinking of like Dua Lipa, or, these artists that just come out of nowhere and um, deliver a perfect 10 album on their very first go. Like that's
that's
amazing to me.
insane. Okay, like, do you feel? So you look at that inspiration. Do you think sometimes you feel like inadequate? Have you ever felt inadequate at your job, or like doing this kind of journey? Have you ever felt insecure, or do you doubt yourself? Like, do you wake up, shit, what am I doing? Do you ever think that, or
Yeah.
not really?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think it's one of the things that I've struggled with throughout my career, has been that kind of imposter syndrome,
Yeah,
and I think it's quite common amongst tech people and engineers, and I think it's partially because we have such a keen understanding of what we don't know, and which is good, right? Because it means you can start to fix those things that you don't know, or learn about those things that you don't know. But it also means you're just painfully aware of them, um, and
mm.
and and I think as well, like again, I'm a competitive person, so I am comparing myself to other people and going, "Oh, they did it better though," and so I think that feeds into it a little bit as well. But I think it's the way that I've gotten through that is just to always reflect on the successes, because I think it's so easy to only reflect on failures and mistakes.
Yeah,
Um, but I think you have to look at the successes and go, I was part of that, or I made some key decision that made that happen, or I implemented this one part of that project that was critical in it succeeding. Like, you have to find those things. That's how I've gotten through it anyway.
Yeah, I think there's a podcast that I just listened to talks about self-awareness, and because a lot of people have difficulty, well, not, I don't know, well, people have difficulty owning up to the bad things they do, but it can go the opposite where people can't own the good things that they do, and that's imposter syndrome. So I think you kind of summarized it really well. I'm interested to know, like, now that you've got your own company, or you're doing your own thing, what do you do outside? Like, is it just programming family, or do you have like, what do you do outside like tech?
Yeah, well, it's kind of funny as well, because like for so long, what I did outside, well, like for the last 3 years, the thing I did outside was work on making video games, and now it's like that's my job.
Yeah,
But no, like the other thing that my wife and I do together is we grow bonsai trees,
cool.
which has been a really cool hobby, and is now with busy jobs and with a 2.5-year-old son, it's kind of the perfect hobby, because you just, for the most part, you're just not doing anything. You're waiting for trees to grow. So
Yeah,
I would highly recommend it as a hobby for time poor people.
nice.
Because
Bonsai
most of the
trees.
time, yeah, most of the time, what you do is you do like half an hour of work on a tree, and then you leave it alone for a year, other than watering it. But yeah, that's one of the things that I get into in spare time
That's
when
cool.
I can find it.
Yeah, are you still doing any taekwondo or not really? It's kind of they're back in the past. 'Cause I find a lot of people who are really competitive, like any sport, they do a sport, they can never go back to it. I don't know if you're the same, but like they
Yeah,
just can't go back to it. They can't go back to that same intensity.
yeah, I'm like that. So like I said, when I was training for the 2015 champs, I was doing a lot of hours,
Yeah.
and then I got the job at Levno. I went to that World Champs. I actually came third at that World Champs, and then I came home and was kind of thinking about, will I do another one? Am I going to go back and do more training, whatever? And I couldn't get past the fact that I was never going to be able to put in as much effort as I had for that Champs.
Yeah.
Like I was just never going to have that many hours available to me again. Um,
Mm.
and so I basically decided that I wasn't going to continue competing, like almost the day that I got home from that World Champs, because yeah, I wanted to get better every time, and I wasn't going to be able to commit the time necessary to be better than I was on that day.
Yeah, I guess it's chapter closed, moving on. Do you have any advice for like people like your younger self or I don't know, anyone who wants to break out on their own?
Um, so this because as part of becoming a game dev means you have to be on Twitter, and I saw this, which is kind of an unfortunate part of it that I'm reckoning with. But
Yeah.
I saw this tweet that has kind of stuck with me, and over the last few months as I've been kind of making decisions and making these changes. And it's going to sound silly because it was very simple, but all it said was, "If you can, do you."
Okay.
And I just
If you
think
can, do
that's,
you.
if you
Yeah.
can, do you. And I don't know, I've just taken a lot of motivation and inspiration from that recently.
That's nice. Cool. I guess we're kind of coming to the tail end of this. What's your kind of favorite thing on your desk? I usually ask, guests of the podcast, what's their favorite thing on their desk? Do you have something on your desk that you like? A bonsai tree could be fine. Kind of cool to see.
Uh, I've got, let me see if I can show you. I'll show you two things. Is that okay? I'll break the
That's
rules.
fine.
They're both very functional things as well. I've got this mouse pad,
Oh, nice.
which is huge. I'm suddenly realizing this is useless for people listening. I've got a really, really big mouse pad.
Yeah.
And the other thing, again, very functional, I've got this weird thing that you sit your laptop in it closed
Yeah.
like this. And it just, because I've got a monitor, and it
Yeah.
just sits in there, and it just means that the laptop takes up like very little space on my desk, because I like to have it. It's why I'm struggling to find things. I like to have a very clean desk with not much on it. And
That's
so
cool.
that helps not take up so much real estate.
Cool. And don't worry, Michael, about the listeners. I guess it gives an incentive to watch the podcast, I guess.
Great.
That's cool. And like, okay, just a follow up to that. Do you have one screen or two screens?
I've got one big
One
screen. Yeah.
monitor. Yeah, yeah, that's interesting because you notice you close your laptop up to save space. Yeah, I'm a one screen kind of guy. I don't know. Some people like to have multiple monitors. But yeah, was there anything else you wanted to add?
Um, no, I think probably the only thing we haven't really talked about is the like strength of tech in this region.
Yeah,
And I don't know. I think that's probably another place that I take a lot of inspiration from because I think we do have such cool businesses in our region and such cool tech workers in our region that are just doing really, really exciting and crazy things. And it gets me really excited about the future of the Manawatu and of New Zealand to see this because the cool thing about tech, I think, is we're such low resource intensive businesses
yeah,
for how much output we can create. And, you know, most tech businesses can be global from pretty much day one if they choose to be. And you use no land, you use no water, you're not importing huge amounts of resource to turn into something. We just need a little bit of electricity and some good internet, and we can create magic. And I think and then export it overseas without using boats or planes. And I just think that is incredible. And yeah, it's humbling to see all of the successful businesses in the Manawatu, especially, and to work with them and cheer them on and help them sometimes where I can.
Perfect. Yeah, that's actually, yeah, really, really, really well said. And I hope the community in ManawaTech gets a lot stronger, especially with this podcast and what you've just said to us. So yeah, thanks for having being on, Michael, and good to have you on again for a second round. So thank you very much.
Sure. Thank you very much.
Thanks for listening to this episode. I hope you enjoyed. Please let us know if you have any feedback or questions. We're always listening and open to it. Catch you in the next one.